All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. Excuse me. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, like a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen, like a desktop, computer, something like that, should be to the right of the video. So let me see here, see who we'll be starting with. So I started with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So it looks like I'll be starting here with Tom S. So the reason why I do that is I try to answer questions for people who I think are here waiting to see their question get answered. If you were on here yesterday afternoon or early this morning, and you have a question on here, just go ahead and copy and paste your question in there, and we will answer it later on. The reason why I do that is I just try to answer questions for people who I think are here actually waiting to see their question get answered. So just kind of gives precedent to the people that are here. So like I said, start here with Tom S. So Tom S says, where is the sweet spot on an iron? How high should you tee the ball for an iron shot? Thanks. So the sweet spot is going to be somewhere around, between that third and fourth groove. So if you go 1, 2, 3, you can see somewhere on that third or fourth groove. So you can kind of see where the wear marks, where most of the wear is on this wedge. That's pretty much the sweet spot on an iron, like between that third and fourth groove. If you want to get a better idea, you can actually go to Google and Google Tiger Woods wear spot, and you'll find a picture where it shows a Tiger's 8-iron, and it's got a much more, Tiger has probably hit a lot more balls with that club than I have with this club, so it's going to show a lot more. And he's also probably hitting the sweet spot a little more than I am, but it's going to show the wear spot. You'll be able to see exactly where that is. So somewhere about third or fourth groove up. Now, as far as how high you should tee up the ball, basically what I tell people for teeing up the ball, you want to tee it high enough to where it gives you a perfect lie. So when you are looking in the fairway and you have your ball there, what lie gets you the most excited? So some people like it a little bit lower, and some people like it to be a little bit higher, right? So it's really whatever tee height gets you that strike location right there. For some people, they may like the tee to be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. I would say generally you're probably teeing it up about a quarter of an inch, just lifting it a hair out of the ground, because that's all you're trying to do on the tee box is give yourself a perfect lie. You're not wanting to tee it way up, because that wouldn't necessarily be a perfect lie for most people, because you could hit right under it, hit too high on the face, and that's not what you want to do. And you don't want to tee it all the way down to where it's basically just sitting on top of the grass, because then you don't have any margin for error. So you just want to lift it just a hair up out of the grass, so that way you have a little bit of margin for error there, because you would much rather hit it a hair high on the face than to really thin it, especially like if you're hitting like a wedge or something like that. So I would say you just want to tee it up, roughly about a quarter of an inch. Again, everybody's going to be a little bit different, but you're just trying to give yourself a perfect lie. So Greg O says, what pulls the club through on the downswing to help maintain lag? How can I feel this in transition? That's a good question. That's a really, really tough question to answer. The reason why it's a good question is because it's a tough question to answer. Part of it is you're asking what you need to feel, and everyone's going to be different in that department. Everyone feels something different. I could tell you what I feel, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to help you, because everyone feels different things. So you kind of have to just, a lot of what golf is adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So, for instance, I believe it was Jack Nicklaus that said he feels like he can't release the club fast enough. He's trying to release it as fast as he possibly can. Well, if most people did that, if they tried to release the club as fast as they possibly could, they would just release it. They would release it faster. They release it even more out in front, right? Or they would release it a lot earlier. And that's not going to be a good thing for most people. Whereas Jack Nicklaus, he needed to feel like he was releasing it faster because he may have been releasing it too far in front. So everyone's got different feelings. So I wish I could answer that for you and tell you, oh, hey, this is exactly what you need to feel. But unfortunately, there really isn't any way for me to do that. What I can tell you is how we're creating lag in the swing. And what a lot of people are doing is they're starting it with their trail side. So what I would say, the thing that you probably need to feel or that may help you if you're casting the club, number one is you got to get some pressure in your lead foot before you start the downswing. If you get some pressure in the lead foot, you can start getting the body to pivot open and start to sequence correctly. If you're on your back foot, you're going to generally cast the club right away, right? And then as far as getting some lag, you want to feel the momentum of the club, right? So if you're bringing this club up and it has no momentum at the top of the swing, you're going to want to throw it right away. So get this club having some momentum going back behind you before you start the downswing. And that's what we talk about in the top speed lag course. So really what you want to do if you want to work on getting lag, I'd recommend going through the top speed lag reps. I wish there was something I could tell you there was one thing that's going to get you lag and have everything that you want, but unfortunately it just doesn't work that way. You got to work through the drills and do the reps and things like that. So to get to the lag course, click that instruction tab, then click the top speed golf system, and then click the top speed lag course and work through the drills. All right, so Tommy S says, I'm having trouble off the tee. I'm pulling inside fastballs. Great for doubles down the third baseline, but not golf. Too many trees and that occasional house in the way. I remember seeing the solution in one of the lessons, but I can't remember or find the lesson I am looking for. So can you point me to the lesson or show answer in this office hour? So basically, if you're pulling the ball, it's because you're swinging the club toward third base, and the club face is also pointed toward third base. So what you need to do is you need to swing that club toward first base. Try to hit a push, basically. Swing that club toward first base. Get that club working more from the inside, and get that face pointed toward first base as well. So some drills to work on that would be the never slice again course. I know you said you're pulling and not slicing, but they're really a product of the same issue, which is swinging too much toward third base. The only difference between a pull and a slice is that on the slice, the club face is pointed to the right of third base, right? And for the pull, the club face is pointing at third base. So basically, if you work through that never slice again course, focus on getting that club to swing from the inside, and you may, unless you start slicing it, you may not need to worry about getting the club face closed because you may already be closing it enough since you're pulling it. So that's what I'd recommend working on. Or the move. The move is going to get you to where you're shallowing out the club in the start of the downswing, because a lot of times the pull is coming from getting this club steep, getting this club more vertical up and down, and that's going to make you swing to the left. So if we get that club more shallowed out, that's going to help you to swing more out toward first base. So to get to either one of those courses, click the house icon. That will take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. I'd recommend going to the Never Slice Again course first, and then maybe work on the move after that. But you can select either one of those courses from there. So Tom M says, Q, 2 questions. One, is Clay Ballard related to Jimmy Ballard? No, it's just a coincidence. They just share the same last name. He's been asked that several times, and I've been asked that, and he's told me that he is not related to him. So no, just a coincidence. So 2 says, does the ball fly further in humid or dry air? My experience is it doesn't, but everything I read indicates it does, because humid air is less dense than dry air. Why would the ball not carry as far in wet air? So yes, if the humidity, it will fly further and more with more humidity, but because the water in the air is lighter, basically, so higher humidity will actually make the ball go further. Now, rain is different. If it's raining and there's actually force from raindrops hitting the ball, it will not go further. But just like in Florida, where it's humid and if it's not raining, which isn't, it rains a lot here. So compared to like dry conditions, maybe in Arizona in the desert, if you're at sea level, the ball will fly further. Now, it's dang near negligible. It's not very much. I think it's funny that we even have that question because it does fly further in more humid conditions, but it's a very small amount. I can't remember how much it is, but you're not really going to be able to tell the difference. So, but yeah, it's because of the density of the air. The water in the air is less than that of air itself. So, because there's more of it in the air, it flies. It will carry further. That's my understanding of it. But it's also it's like such a small amount that you won't even notice. So Tom M says, has another question. Can you explain Bryson DeChambeau's swing? He looks like his arms and body are starched together with a lot of tension, yet he hits it a mile. Yeah, he has a lot of tension in his swing. This idea is that that there's no tension. It's baloney. There is tension in the swing. Absolutely, there is tension. So it's just that we don't want to be like, if we're at a dress, we don't want to be flexing every muscle in our body because it's going to be difficult to move. But we have to tense our muscles and flex our muscles in order to move the club, right? So as soon as you start bringing the club back, like your arms start to tense up some, right? You're pushing into the ground. Your quad is tensing up, right? Your leg is getting, at a dress, it may have a little bit of tension in it, but just because you're kind of squatting down a little bit, right? But as you start to swing, it's going to tense up more because you're using that muscle to push your hips back. So there is tension. The muscles have to have tension in them to work, but we're not trying to tense them just to flex them, if that makes sense. If you have something more specific about Bryson's swing, I'll be happy to help. I could spend the whole office hours talking about Bryson's swing. So if you have something specific about his swing, I'll be happy to answer it. So Brian S says, hi, I understand using the move to create shaft lean and delofting the club face is the same method used with woods, especially the driver. Yes. So what you're actually doing with the move is you're getting the club on plane and square as soon as possible. And we want to do that with every club in the bag, right? So what the move is so at the top of the swing, this club is not on plane, right? Now, if you have a very flat swing, then the club may already be on plane, and you may not need to shallow it to get it on plane. But that's usually not the best way to do it because it's going to rob you of some distance, right? So if I'm swinging like this and my club's already on plane, I'm going to have a hard time getting a lot of distance from here. If I'm more up here, where most players are, where we see most of the best players, I'm going to have a much easier time to get distance. Because I'm going to have more space and time to accelerate the club. So that's what the first part of the move is. It's getting that club shallowed out, right? So it's getting that club from a steeper position above the plane and getting that to be on the plane as soon as possible. What we see a lot of times is where we get players that go like this. They get right here and this club is steep, right? Well, my only options from here are to basically kind of continue down steep and swing over the top or throw the club into the ground. And when I do that, I'm going to hit pulls. I'm going to hit slices. I'm going to have a hard time hitting in the center of the face. I'm going to have a hard time making good ground contact. I'm going to be chopping down into the ball. It's just going to be very difficult to be consistent. My other option from here is to stand up, right? So if I stand up, that gets the club to shallow out later. But now I've had to stand up. I can't rotate when I stand up. And also when I stand up, I have to throw the club at the ball because if I get shaft lean and I'm standing up, then I'm not going to get to the ball. So I have to throw the club to get to the ball. And again, when I do that, I'm adding loft. I'm not going to be able to be consistent because my ground contact's not going to be very good. I'm going to hit a lot of thin shots. So it's just going to be really difficult to be consistent. So I want to get this club on plane as soon as I can, so that way I can stay in my posture, and then I can rotate through the ball, and I don't have to make any compensations. So that's what we see pretty much all tour players doing, 99%. There are some players that start down a little bit steep, but eventually they do shallow it. All players shallow the club, every single one of them. All of them do. It's just a matter of when they do it. So players like, so for example, Phil Mickelson would be an example of a player that shallows the club later. Like he brings this club down steep, right? And then later on in the swing, it's shallowed out, right? So what I mean by that is this club is on the inside of my hands. He's not steep and then kind of brings it out over here. He's steep, and then the club kind of works in underneath just a little bit. So he gets it to work for him. Now, that's usually not the better way to do it, because then things are dependent on timing, which, you know, if you think about Phil Mickelson, I think he's one of the best. I think he has the best hands and the best probably coordination of any golfer ever, because to be as good as he has been with coming down steep and then shallowing it out a little bit late, like your timing and your hand-eye coordination has to be unbelievable. And that's a big reason why he has such a great short game, right? Another player would be Gary Woodland, that starts down a little bit steep, and he's also like a sensational athlete. He played college basketball, you know, so I think he played I don't know if it was D1. I can't remember. He played college basketball somewhere for a little bit before he went in. I think he got injured and then started playing golf. So, but an exceptional athlete, right? So, but he's also someone that starts down a little bit steep and then shallows it later. So you can't do that, but everybody shallows out the club. The other part of what the move is getting that face as square as possible. So what we see a lot of people doing, especially if you're inconsistent, is we see this club coming down steep, and then we also see that face is kind of open as they're coming down. All right, so you can see how my face angle. If I put this on here, you'll be able to more easily see it. So it's steep, and then my face is kind of open, right, when I'm coming down. So if I'm in this area, if I'm coming down steep and my face is open, I'm gonna hit a big old slice, or I gotta stand up and flip. I'm gonna be really inconsistent. So what I need to do is I need to get this club shallowing out and get this face squaring up, right? Get that face more square in a stronger position. So now I don't have to do anything in my swing. I don't have anything else to do but just turn through the ball. And we want to do that with all clubs. So yes, it helps you. The move helps you to get shaft lean, right? Because it makes it so that you don't have to stand up and flip at the ball. But that's not really what the move is trying to do necessarily. It's maybe what you need to do to get shaft lean, but that's not just what the move is. The move just isn't shaft lean at impact. The move is shallowing out the club and squaring the face earlier, so that way you can stay in your posture and then get shaft lean later. There's lots of people that do the move, but then still flip a little bit in early release at impact. I see it every day in lessons. So it definitely helps you to get to that point. So the question, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but the question was, do you do the move with your driver and your fairway woods? Yes, absolutely you do. You want to get that club on plane and square as much as possible. If you want to be a consistent driver of the golf ball, if you want to hit the driver straight, you want to hit your fairway wood straight, you need to be doing the move, right? You need to be getting this club shallowing out and square as soon as possible, so that way you don't have to make any compensations later in the swing. Because with the driver, those compensations, if the timing isn't right, they get multiplied because things are moving faster. There's less loft. You know, you're hitting the ball further. So if you hit a ball 5 degrees offline with a wedge versus 5 degrees offline with a driver, there's a huge difference. You know, it's going to end up, the total distance that ends up offline is a lot more because you're hitting the ball so much further with the driver. So, and the other thing to think about is with the driver, the only reason why you don't have shaft lean with the driver is where the ball is positioned, right? And the way that you're trying to hit the ball. So you're going to have a tiny bit of shaft lean, typically, like a couple degrees, somewhere in that area. We don't want to be coming into the driver like this and have no shaft lean, because then you're just adding a lot of loft and you're going to hit a really spinny kind of shot. So kind of the way that you want to hit your driver is almost like a top spin forehand, right? So if I'm playing tennis, if I got my tennis racket here, I want to come in and it's almost like a top spin forehand that I'm hitting it with. That's if I'm hitting up on it, right? Like a top spin forehand, I'm kind of trying to hit up on it. If I do that, that's going to allow me to launch it high, right? And then if I de-loft it, that's going to allow me to get less spin, right? So high launch, low spin, the ball is going to go further and it's going to roll out more. So that's what you want. If you're getting a lot of spinny shots, it might be because you're flipping through contact, and working on the move can help you to get to that point. All right, so let's just moving back up. So Dan C says it seems the focus is off today on the camera. It looks to be on my end. It's possible it can go out of focus sometimes. It could also be internet connection. If the internet connection isn't very good, it may kind of dumb down the video a little bit. So Tom M goes on and says, thanks on the Bryson explanation. Everything I've been taught is to have loose wrists. This certainly doesn't look like Bryson does. I think he is just too damn strong that all traditional teaching is out the window. I never try a swing like him, but just a question of curiosity. So if you look at Bryson's swing, his wrists are, he is letting his wrists hinge. So it's not like he's not letting the club hinge back and forth. One thing you have to keep in mind is that that's kind of what the top speed golf system is all about. So if you look at every tour player, even Bryson, Dustin Johnson, every single tour player, everybody playing in the Ryder Cup, they're all nailing the piece of the top speed golf system. So they all have a stable fluid spine. They all get in a big shoulder turn. John Rahm doesn't have a huge shoulder turn, but he's definitely getting at least 90 degrees. They're all getting lag in their swings, right? They're all releasing the club out in front. They all have the compression line, everything lined up and just slightly angled away. All of them are doing the top speed golf system. All of them are doing the move as well. So those are the things. That's kind of what the top speed golf system is all about. These are the things that are the most important. I don't know if you've heard of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle, but basically what it means is that 80% of your success is basically going to come from 20% of the things you can do, right? So there's a small number of things that you can do in your swing that are going to give you the most amount of your success, and that's what the top speed golf system is. These are all the things. When we look at all the better players, they're all doing these things. These are the things that matter the most in the golf swing. Look at every single player on tour. They're all doing what we're talking about. But the swings all look different, right? So why is that? Well, the reason is that the other things that are in the swing, that are happening in their swings, like Bryson, he takes a much bigger shoulder turn than a lot of the guys do. Right, his arms are straight. He stands further away from the ball. His arms are straighter at rest. He has more tension in his swing. Right, obviously it works really well for him. Right, you look at Jon Rahm. He stands really close to the golf ball. He's on top of the golf ball. Right, you look at Dustin Johnson. He has a crazy bowed wrist. At the top. They all have kind of their own unique kind of things that they do in their swing, and that's what works for them. But if you look at all of them, they're all doing the top speed golf system. So that's really, if you get the pieces of the system down, those are the things that you want to be looking at. All right, so let's keep going. So Dennis C says, I installed the V1 Golf app on my phone about 2 weeks ago. Great tool. I've used it at the driving range and at home for practice. The feedback is great. I found I'm not getting my body ahead of my downswing enough to impact. I'm trying to soften my hands at the top and relax the arms more as I pull down. What other move can I make to get the body more ahead of the arms and hands and get the correct impact position? I would need to look at your swing to know for sure what you need to do. But just to be honest with you, it's really just doing the top speed golf system. I would make sure that your spine angles are correct. I make sure that you're getting a good power turn. If you don't turn right, it's hard to get everything. It's hard to get everything turned away from you, right? And everything's going to be too much out in front of you. If you don't have lag in your swing, if you're casting the club, everything's going to be too much out in front of you, right? If you're bumping your hips forward, you're not going to be able to get your body in front because everything's going to get jammed up. So you need to get your compression line correct, maybe. So just have to look. What I would recommend doing, you got the V1 Golf app. And for those of you who are familiar with what that is, it's an app where you can video your swing and draw lines on it and analyze and see what's going on. It's also the app that we use for unlimited swing reviews. This is a program where you can send videos of your swing through the app, and you can have an instructor take a look at your swing and if you want to know exactly what you need to do and kind of move past the top speed golf system, or know specifically what you need to do within the top speed golf system, unfortunately you have to work with. I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I wish there was a way that I could just tell you exactly what you need to do. But everybody's going to be a little bit different. So, like I said, all tour players have different swings, but they're all doing the top speed golf system. Whereas most amateur players are not doing the top speed golf system, and then there could be other things that are going on that we don't, because everyone's unique in how they move. So. That's what I would recommend doing, is take a look at your swing with the top speed golf system and kind of work through it that way. But if you want to know for sure, hey, this is what I need to do, cut to the chase, then what I'd recommend doing is signing up for unlimited swing reviews with the instructor, so that way they can evaluate your swing and tell you exactly what you need to do. This office hours is nice. You can get some questions answered. But a lot of times people, they say there's specific things going on with their swing, and unfortunately there just isn't any way for me to know without seeing your swing. So that's what I'd recommend, working with an instructor through unlimited swing reviews. If you want to check that out, click the Get a Review link, and you can check out unlimited swing reviews. If there's a spot available, grab it. If not, join the waiting list. So Tom S says, Q, what is the setup for hitting a wedge off of a tight lie? It's really no different than it would be off of any other lie. What I like to do, when you're hitting off of a tight lie, it's really, really important that you control the low point of your swing. So what that means is I'm controlling where the club comes down and comes back up, right? So to do that, to make that as easy as possible, what I like to do is have my feet pretty close together. You see, when your feet are further apart, the low point of your swing can kind of move around as I shift around, right? Whereas if I put my feet together, I'm not really going to be moving around very much. I'm staying very central, right? So I like to have about a club head width between my feet, and then I like to kind of lean on my lead side, right? And then I like to stay there. One thing that you can do to make it a little bit easier is to have the club a little bit more upright. So if I'm hitting a wedge here, I may have the club just a little bit more upright. And when you do that, you'll hold the club a little bit more in your hands instead of in your fingers, to have the club be a little bit more upright. So that way, that's going to put the toe down just a little bit. And that gives you to where you can get down underneath the ball a little bit more easily. And then you would just try to hit the ball slightly off the toe. That'd be about the only thing that I would change if I was hitting off of a really tight lie, is to kind of play it off the toe a little bit and have that club stick kind of standing up a little bit. And that just makes it a little bit easier. There's less interaction with the ground when you do that. So feet close together, right? Feet close together, lean on the lead side, club a little bit more upright, hit it off of the toe just a little bit. And keep in mind, when you hit it off the toe a little bit, it's going to deaden the shot. You're not going to be transferring as much energy to the shot. And then, just kind of take your You're just kind of taking your normal swing when you do that. So other than that, there really isn't. You just have to be a little bit more skilled with it. Definitely something I would practice. So Tom S. says, on paper, the U.S. should smash Europe in the Ryder Cup. Half the European team are ready for the Champions Tour. Do you see an upset happening? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's happened before. I think every single year, pretty much, the U.S. is on paper the better team. But you got to keep in mind, it's a team event, right? It's not an individual event. If it was an individual event, and everyone was kind of out for themselves, then, I would take the bet who's going to win the tournament more likely, an American player or a European player. I would say an American player, especially if it was in America. The other thing to think about is a lot of these European players, they live in America, or they have other residents in America. So they're very comfortable here. You saw footage yesterday of all the European players wearing the cheese heads, in Wisconsin, and they also, they love being the underdogs. They embrace it. So, when you're the underdog, it takes pressure off of you, right? If you win, you came back and you won. If you lose, who cares? You were supposed to lose. So, if you're the favorite, like the U.S., I assume they're the favorite, right? Because on paper they have the better golfers. There's a lot of pressure on you to win, right? And it's not, they're not as good of a team, right, as Europe is. So, but we'll see. I think it'll be entertaining, but it would not surprise me in the slightest if Europe won. I would say that it's actually probably 50-50 for the most part. But we'll see. I hope USA wins. I mean, that's who I want to win. I'll be rooting for him, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely not. Every year it's like this for the most part. So Bill H says, what is the best position to film when practicing, behind or face on, and why? It's actually both. You want to get both. You want to look at both because there are things that you can see in a face-on view that you cannot see from a down line. So when you're looking at face-on, you're going to be looking at most of the pieces of the top speed golf system, right? You're looking at your ball position, not your ball position, but your spine angle, right? Your setup, you're looking at a lot. To the top of the swing, you want to see a good shoulder turn, right? You want to see your spine angle retained, right? You want to see some lag coming down in the face on, right? And you want to see some shaft lean and some release out in front. You want to see a compression line that's, pretty vertical or slightly angled away with an iron and everything nice in a straight line there. When you're looking from down the line, right, you want to make sure your posture is correct. You want to see that you're kind of bending down in the start of the downswing and that you're not early extending. You want to see this club coming down on plane and this face getting square earlier. There's just things that you need to be filming both, basically, because there's things you can't see either or. You can have a swing that looks great from face on, right? You can have a swing that looks like tons of lag and everything looks great, but then you look in the down line and you're coming down steep and maybe you're coming over the top, and things like that. But those are just things you can't see in a down line view. So really you want to look at both. Jeff says, what adjustments do you make on a soft sand versus firm sand in a green side bunker? Good question. So let's go over what we would normally do in a soft sand bunker, right? So for a soft sand bunker, what we want to make sure that we're doing is we want to make sure that we're opening the face. The reason for that is we want to expose the bounce on this club. That's this big hunk of metal on the bottom side of this club. The reason why we want that is so that the club can glide through the sand. Right? So if you imagine if I'm water skiing, that's like having the nose up out of the water. That the skis are going to glide. The skier is going to glide on top of the water. If we get the nose diving, pointing down into the water, the skis are going to dive into the water, and that's what happens with the club. If we come in with this leading edge, touching the sand first, then this club's going to want to dive into the sand, and it's going to get lost in the sand. It's not going to be able to get the ball out of there. So we want to open this face to expose that bounce so that club can glide through there. And when I see a lot of people struggle getting out of the sand, is because they don't open up the face enough. I would open up that face about 45 degrees for a normal sand bunker shot. Then what we want to do is we want to place that ball, pretty forward in the stance. The reason for that is because we're not really hitting the ball, right? We're not hitting the ball. We are hitting the sand and then hitting the ball. So if you imagine, if I normally play the ball with a wedge about in the middle of my stance, that's about where I want to hit the sand. So I want to have that ball a few inches forward of that, 4, 5, 6 inches forward of that. So that's where the ball is going to be. And then I want to make sure that I swing hard, right? Because I'm not hitting the ball. I'm hitting the sand, and then the sand's throwing the ball out of the bunker. So you almost want to imagine like I'm taking sand and I'm throwing it out of the bunker. That's how hard I need to hit the sand to get the ball up out of there. So that's what you kind of want to imagine. Well, a lot of people do, and this is a normal thing because it's a short shot, and you feel like you shouldn't be hitting it that hard, but you're not hitting the ball, you're hitting the sand. Right? So that's what we're doing. We're open face, ball forward in the stance, hit the sand, 4 or 5 inches, sometimes 6 inches behind the ball, swing hard, get the ball up out of there. Right? Well, if we have firm sand and we take that same approach, what's usually going to happen is that club is going to come down, it's going to bounce off of the sand, and then you're going to scull it out of the sand. So we have to make some adjustments to get that club to dig just a little bit. We still want the club to glide through the sand, but we want it to dig just a little bit, because if we just hit it like a normal shot, then the club's going to end up digging too much, right? So you want to let the club dig a little bit. So the adjustments that you would make would be to open the face a little bit less, right? To hit a little bit closer to the golf ball, because we're not hitting into the sand so much. And the other thing that I would do is I would kind of lean forward. So you still have the ball placement to be in the same place between your feet, but then you're going to lean forward a little bit. And what that does is that makes your angle of attack be a little bit steeper. So you open the face a little bit less, you hit a little bit closer to the golf ball, somewhere in that 2 to 3 inch behind the ball range, and you lean forward, and you're not going to hit it as hard because you're going to be getting a little bit more of the ball, right? So you think about that, and you think about, well, how the heck do I control this? How do I know how much to open the face, and how hard I need to hit? That is something that you learn through practice. That's a skill that you have to learn. So I can tell you, hey, you need to make these adjustments for you to be good at it, right? You have to go practice it. So a way that you can go practice it is by going, hopefully you have a local place that you can go to that has a practice range or a practice, sand trap that you can go into. And what you can do is you can go after a really rainy day, right? Think, oh man, it's pouring out. This would be a great time to go out, and because the wetness really packs down the sand. If you can't wait for that, right, then bring a bottle of water with you, or a big jug of water with you, and pour it in the sand and really pack it down. Because what you have to realize is that not all firm sand is created equal. You're not necessarily going to make the same adjustment from one place to the other. If it's really hard, like concrete sand, you're going to open up the face maybe just a little bit. You're going to lean forward, and you're going to hit a little bit behind the ball, and you're not going to swing as hard because the club's going to bounce off there. You're going to get more ball. If it's normally a soft sand bunker and you get a little bit of rain and it's firmed up just a little bit, you're just making a small adjustment. So it's not always the same. That's why it's a skill that you have to learn. So that's what I would do is I would go to the range and I do where the sand's just wet and you haven't packed it down. So it's wet. So the club's not going to work through it as much. So you just make a small adjustment. Then I would pack it down a little bit and then try it. Then I'd pack it down some more, then try it. Right. And, if you can find a hard place in the bunker, that would be a good place to try it as well. So you can kind of get a feel for that. Now, one thing you often see with players do is they'll get in the bunker and they'll dig their feet in. There's basically 2 reasons for that. One is that sand can be very unstable. So digging your feet into it can give you a little bit more stability in your swing. The other thing is to get a feel for the sand, right? So you can get a feel for, okay, is the top layer soft? Underneath, it's really hard. So I need to adjust what I'm doing. Or is it like concrete? Does it look soft, but is it like concrete? or does it look like it's like concrete and then it's actually really soft? You have to, you're not going to get that unless you kind of dig into it a little bit. So that's another way to kind of feel it. But in order to develop the skill for knowing how big of adjustments you need to make, you got to go practice it. I wish I could just tell you what you need to do, but yeah, you got to go practice that one. So Tom D says, do you think Bryson has a shot at the long drive competition? I think he will hit the grid much more frequently than the big boys. That is the only thing that will give him a chance. His club head and ball speed are way below the top guys. I don't think so if any of those guys are getting it in there. There's just the other thing, too, is it's his first one. So maybe down the road he might have a chance, but I don't think – I mean – Brogmeyer and Berkshire and, a lot of them guys, they're swinging over 150 miles per hour, and they've won a lot of these competitions. Justin James, he's winning a lot of competitions. So I don't think he has any chance of winning the first one. If he continues with it, he may have a chance down the road if he continues to get faster. But, I mean, I definitely think he can beat some people, but making it all the way through, right? I just don't think he's going to beat, everything would have, like all the stars would have to line up, which I mean, he's, I don't know what kind of pressure he's going to be feeling with it. We all know that Bryson can get way off, right? And the other thing to think about is that when, he's not necessarily, I don't know that I necessarily agree that he's going to get much more in the grid because, if he was swinging 130 something, he would probably maybe get more in the grid. But when he's swinging as fast as he needs to beat those guys, I don't know that he's, the most I've seen him swing, I saw he had a 148. And and the ball speed on that was like 206 or something like that. I think it was. The guys they're getting like 225 ball speed, 230 ball speed. The guys that are, really up there. So sure there's a chance, but I think it's highly unlikely that he'll win against those guys just because he just doesn't have the experience. But who knows? Maybe those guys will be, starstruck that they're in a competition, or maybe that they can't let the PGA Tour player beat them. I don't know if any of them kind of have that attitude, but I'd be surprised if any of them won, or if he beat any of those guys. So Rick H says, you feel like your right arm extension is passive or forceful through impact into the straight line release. So again, that kind of goes back to the feel thing. Are you asking me personally if I feel like it is? I don't. I feel like it's more of a passive thing for me, but that may not be what you necessarily need to feel. So feel is relative. So I can't tell you what it's going to feel like for you. But for me, it does feel more passive, like the club's kind of slinging through, right? The club head's kind of behind me. I can feel that club head's behind me, and I'm letting my hips are turning through, and I'm letting that club kind of sling through there. So it's feeling more passive. It doesn't feel like I'm necessarily doing that with my hand to get it there, but that may not necessarily be what you may need to feel that. And that's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with Jack Nicklaus. He was talking about how he can't release the club fast enough. Well, he may have been needing to feel that, right? He may need to feel like he's actually doing this to get it to do that, right? So, because everybody's a little bit different. So I wish I could tell you exactly what you need to feel, but unfortunately, I'm not you, so I don't know what you're feeling, and I don't know what you exactly need to feel. I can tell you. I can kind of give you an idea. I will tell you this: if you're someone who is releasing the club early, then you may need to feel like it's not releasing at all. So that's a lot of what it is. Is you have to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. Your feel is rarely the reality of what's going on. So I would just try to feel something that gets you the desired result that you want to have, even though that feeling may be, if you literally did it, would be the wrong thing, right? So, for example, if you're someone who's you're coming into contact like this, you may need to feel like you're coming into contact like this, right? That you're never releasing that club ever. You're never extending, you're never flexing your wrist. You're keeping it extended back the whole way. That may be what you need to feel is happening, but that doesn't mean odds are, if you're someone who does this and you feel this, it's going to look more like that, right? And that's what the adjusting your feel to get the desired result means. So Duke V says, hello, in the Moose series, Clay talks about really closing the face of the club when at knee level. Am I correct in assuming we do this repetitively for muscle memory, and the during in the actual swing, it should be muscle memory? I shouldn't be thinking on the downswing to actively close the club face, correct? So basically, you have to go through the stages of learning, right? So there's 4 stages of learning. The first one is unconscious incompetence. This is where you're unaware of that you even need to close the face, right? You don't even know that there's anything that you need to do, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is when you become aware of it, right? This is called it's called conscious incompetence, where now you're aware of that there is something you need to do, but you don't know how to do it. You're not able to do it yet. And then you learn to do it, right? And that's where you work into the 3rd stage, which is called conscious competence, where now you're able to do it. You're able to get the club face closed coming down, but you have to think about it in order to do it. The moment you don't think about it, you do something else, right? Or you don't do it enough, right? So you have to keep thinking about it, doing it until you don't anymore. And that's why we ask you to do all these reps, because it takes time to develop that. It takes time to go from that 3rd stage to the last stage, which is called unconscious competence. This is where you do it automatically, right? So some examples of things that you do automatically that you don't have to think about, probably typing, right? You typed a long question. I'm guessing that you weren't sitting there and going like this with every key. That probably would take you a while. If you did, then thanks for taking the time to post your question. But if you think about just anything that you've learned to do fast, you've learned to do slow first, and you've had to think through it, right? So most people in their life have learned how to type, right? So if you're typing, right, initially you're kind of going, I know this is kind of my experience learning how to type, right? I was kind of like this. I had no idea where the letters were. I was looking on the keyboard, looking around, and I was pointing and pecking. And then you get to where you start figuring out where the letters are, right? And you get to where you can go a little bit faster. You're still pointing and pecking, but you're going a little bit faster. And then you learn, oh, okay, this is how you're supposed to put your fingers on the keyboard. And every finger has an individual job. And then you kind of have to train your fingers, and you're still looking at the keyboard to kind of, okay, pinky does this, you learn to type your name, and then you get to go where you're going faster and faster and faster. And then you get to where you can look at the screen and you don't have to look at the keyboard anymore, because you know where all the letters are, and the fingers know what to do. And then you start moving faster and faster, and you stop thinking in terms of typing individual letters, and you start thinking in terms of typing individual words, right? And then you start thinking in terms of typing whole sentences and paragraphs, right? So, but you just do it without much thought. It becomes automatic. If you're a proficient typer, right? If you type an entire sentence, you're probably not going to remember the T that you typed in right? You're not going to remember that individual action because it was automatic. When you get into a vehicle, right? You check the mirrors, you put the seatbelt on, you put the key in the ignition, right? When you first started driving, you really had to think through every single step, but then eventually you got to where it was automatic. You don't even have to think about it. You don't even remember turning the key. Because you just did it, right? So that's the same thing that you have to work through whenever you're changing anything in your golf swing. You have to work through the stages of learning. So that's why when you're doing the system, don't jump around everywhere. Stick to one level and get that to where it's second nature. Because if you don't, and you move on to another one, you're going to go right back to what you were doing before. So let's say you're working on the power turn, right? And you maybe did 100 reps where you're getting a big shoulder turn, right? Well, then you move on. You say, "Oh, I'm tired of this. I'm bored. I'm going to go to the lag course," and you start working on the lag course. Well, as soon as you start working on the lag and you're not thinking about getting that bigger shoulder turn, you're going to go right back to the short shoulder turn, right? So that's why we tell you, hey, this is the level 1 test or the level 2 test. I want you to do 1,000 reps, 3,000 reps, where you're checking it on camera and make sure you're doing it right. Because if you don't, then when you move on to the next thing, you're going to go right back to what you were doing before, right? So you can't ever get rid of a habit. You can only create new habits to overcome the new ones. So that's what the stages of learning is you have a habit right now of maybe not getting a big shoulder turn. And you have to develop the habit of getting a big shoulder turn until it becomes your new habit and it overcomes the old one, right? Doesn't mean that it can't ever come back again. It just means that you have to build a new habit. And the way to do that is you have to think about it until basically you don't anymore. So I wish I knew the moment when everybody knows. It's just kind of like you just kind of realize it one day that, oh, I don't really have to think about this. I just do it automatically. All right, so we got about 8 minutes left if we got any more questions. If not, no big deal. While you guys are coming up with a new question, I'm going to be checking my email here. All right, so we got a new question here. All right, so High Tesh says, last Saturday I had 7 shanks with 56 degree. Can you please recap chipping from 10 yards? So if you're getting one, I would film your swing. Get the video camera out and film your swing from face on and down the line, because even the ones that you're not shanking, you're probably hitting off of the heel, right? So I don't know exactly why you're doing it specifically, but I'm going to go through a couple things that I see most commonly. So one, you might be standing a little bit too close to the ball. So give yourself some space. If you're standing on top of the ball for a little chip like this, you just don't have any space for your hands. So you may move the hands out toward the ball, and that may cause the hosel strike. So give yourself some space. Give yourself some space for your hands to move through that. It's a very common thing that I see. The other thing that I see is the hips kind of move toward the ball. So I know it's not, you're talking about a little 10-yard chip, so the hips shouldn't be moving around very much. But if you're seeing that your hips are kind of really moving forward, you take a little 10 and you're kind of moving your hips forward like this, well, again, that's taking away the space from your hands. That's going to push the hosel out toward the ball, right? So if you're seeing that on video, the way that you can kind of check this is use something like V1 Golf, the app that we talked about earlier. It's a free app. And you can video your swing and draw a line on your backside there and see if that backside moves toward the ball at all. It should not be moving toward the ball. And if it is, then I feel like you're really pushing your hips back and creating more space right here and swinging through. So that's one other thing that I would look at. The last thing I would look at is the path of the club. We want this club to be working a little bit from the inside to the ball. So if it's working kind of across the ball, right, or if it's working too much from that would make it difficult to hit it in the center of the face. So that's what I would look at. If that is the case, then you want to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you're swinging, if you're kind of chopping down into the ball, coming down steep, then I feel like you're swinging out to the right, right? If you're swinging too much into out and the hosel's kind of working up into the ball, right, then I'd feel like you're kind of chopping down into the ball. So those would be a few things that I would look at, but you got to get the video camera out to see for sure. The last thing I would say is just try to hit the ball off the toe. Right? Try to hit the ball off the toe, and that will likely move that strike more in the center of the face. And keep trying to do that until you actually start hitting the ball off the toe. All right, so Boise and Dad says swing speed 100 on driver using a regular flex shaft. Do I need a stiff flex? Can you give quick primer on the kick point, etc., on choosing the next shaft? I've seen 108 on swing speed, so know that I have more speed to come after speed training. Any advice is appreciated. My advice is to go get professionally fitted. There's no way for me to know if you need a stiff flex shaft or not. Kick point is talking about basically, a firmer shaft is going to kick a little bit later. Typically, some shafts are stiffer in the tip, so they kick a little bit later. So you just got to go get professionally fitted to know what shaft works best for you. And the one thing to keep in mind is that not all shaft flexes are created equal. One company's stiff flex shaft might be a regular flex shaft that you have. So you may already have a stiff flex shaft as it compares to another company, right? So, there's no laws in how that can be. So that's what I would recommend, is just go get professionally fitted. Goes on to say it's inconsistent on straight to the right and left. Never know what I'm going to get. Yeah. So if you have a lot of flex in your shaft, it can be more inconsistent. So yeah, I would just I'll go get professionally fitted. That would be my best recommendation. Go somewhere that gets you on a launch monitor, so that way you can actually see your ball flight. Go somewhere that has you swing your current driver, and then they put a new driver in your hand or a new shaft in your hand, and you can clearly see the difference between the two. That's what I would recommend doing. I wish I could tell you, oh yeah, you need this club, this shaft, and all that, but unfortunately, there's just no way to know without seeing, without actually getting you on launch monitor and trying different shafts. Because even a club fitter, they don't, even when you hit your shots, they don't know exactly what you need right away. They probably have 5 or 6 different shafts in their heads. I'm not a club fitter. I'm just kind of guessing like the process that they go through, like the way that I would do it. I would know 5 or 6 shafts in my mind that I believe that would work well for you. And it's just about finding that combination of the head and the shaft and the length of the shaft, the weight of the shaft, the weight of the head, the CG of the head, just trying to find that right combination that works for you. But you just got to go get professionally fitted if you want to know those things. So that's what I would recommend doing. Boys and goes on. Any recommendations on specific companies that do fittings? I don't want to do somewhere where they give me a choice of flex only, not choices of torque. What I'd recommend is Club Champion. I don't have any affiliation with them, but Club Champion, they're going to get you in a launch monitor. They're going to have you bring in your old driver. You're going to be, they're going to be able to clearly show you, hey, this driver is better than the one that you have right now. Here's the numbers side by side. That's what I would recommend. I've been there a few times and had good experiences every time I've gone. I've also heard of people having bad experiences, but that hasn't been my experience. So the ones that I've been to, there's one. I think there's actually 2 in Chicago, but I went to one in Chicago. I don't know where you live, but I went to one in Chicago, had a good experience there, and I've been to the one here in Orlando. And had a good experience there too. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. And PGA Superstore, I've seen I've seen them fit people. I mean, I haven't watched like a whole fitting, but I've been in the store and seen people getting fitted for clubs. They're having them hit shots and showing them the difference and things like that. Just bring your old driver in and see what's going on. I know Golf Galaxy, same kind of thing. That would be good places to go. But the main thing is anywhere that has you hit clubs, right? And the other thing I would say is if you want a choice of torque and things like that, ask for it, right? That should be a part of the fitting process. And if they're not doing that, then ask them why, right? That's what I would recommend doing. If you want an answer, you're paying for a fitting, you're paying for the club. If you want the answer to ask them, right? I think a lot of people go in and they just kind of take what they give you,
and then they get upset because they didn't get what they wanted. Well, you got to ask questions. You got to if you want to make sure you're in the right thing, ask questions. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you all next time.